I'm Xenia Fernandez and welcome to the most awaited panel of the SOW Summit. The subject of conversation is going to be the future of investments in India. And of course, we have a power panel to discuss this very, very powerful subject. But before I introduce our panelists to you, let's talk a little bit about where we stand right now. So you'll all agree with me when I say that India is fast becoming home to startups focused on high growth areas such as mobility, be it e-commerce, or even other several vertical specific solutions. We're creating new markets, we're driving innovation, and even in the pandemic, I'd say it's not failed to dampen the investor spirit. In fact, this week, 23 Indian startups raised funding, of which 20 received a total sum of about $506 million. So the question is, what's keeping the investors headstrong and so positive at heart? What's propelling the future of investments in India? And of course, it's best that we asked them, the experts. So I hope you have your pen and paper handy. I hope you have your e-books, e-notebooks handy as I introduce you to our panel today. Joining me in conversation is a serial tech entrepreneur, an investor, a TV host, who started his first startup at the age of 19 around his patent pending technology. He built it into a multi-million-dollar valuation by the age of 22. He's built 8 businesses in the US and India. And as the great-great-grandson of Sarojini Naidu, he continues to pay forward this legacy by tirelessly serving the Indian youth through entrepreneurship education, using a lean startup methodology, and the principles of the Bhagavad Gita. And his efforts through Kolkata Ventures in the past 3 years have resulted in, 400 or more revenue generating startups, which are responsible for around 4,500 new job creations in 10 states across East India. Now, if you ask him, and all of us who know him know that his management style is derived from the principles of Bhagavad Gita. And of course, what an influential youth icon he is. Avelo Roy is with us in the house. Mr. Roy, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Very grateful for your kind introduction. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Okay, now our next guest has over 2 decades of experience in managing alternative funds, capital reorganization, business ownership, strategy planning, financial control, and management. He is experienced in unlocking shareholder value by structuring transactions and businesses. In fact, he's incorporated 3 alternative funds over the last 6 years. He's a sponsor, an investor, and in an alternative investment fund, and he steered various exits from the investee companies. He's invested and has an experience with startups and building a strong, robust team during the growth phase of the startups. Currently, he manages 18 Unitus Group associated entities in and outside India. And apart from all of these things, all of the various hats that he wears, he also loves to share his experiences and his learnings through various public platforms. And he does this with the intent to pass on as much information and knowledge as possible. So who better than Vikas Sarda to join us? Vikas, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. It's a little more than what I expected, actually. So the introduction.
Well, we only talk facts. So thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate it.
She's a professional.
Yeah. Thank you.
Next on the panel, as you can already probably see him on screen, and this is the CTO of 100x VC, one of India's most prolific early stage venture funds, and partner at the venture investment arm of his family office, Mehta Ventures. Now, through the 2 of them, he has led 30 plus venture investments across the globe. And I really think that this diverse experience that he has is going to help all of us tuned in right now to understand what goes on in the mind of the VC, and also down to the simpler subject of how to translate an idea into a business. Everybody say hello to Vatsal Kanakiya. Vatsal, welcome.
Hi, thank you all for having me here. So glad to be here on this panel with some amazing co-panelists. Looking to learn so much from them.
It's our pleasure, and thank you once again, everybody. So without any further ado, I'm going to get down to the very first question that actually comes to my mind when I see the three of you here, which is if you could just tell our audiences a little bit about your journey, but more importantly, from the point of view of what is your investment philosophy today. Avelo, why not start with you?
Sure. So I have been an entrepreneur first and then an investor. And I was taught actually investment from my investors who invested in my company in the US. So I started at the age of 19, built my first company by, at that age in college, and then sold that, 8 businesses, 3 exits, and have been in India since 2016 and been investing there. So my philosophy is more based on 3 things. One is team, absolutely, like has to be a dynamic, skilled, ethical, and energetic team. Second is relevant with the technology for the next 3 years minimum. So they should be aware of how the scene is changing, the policies are changing, what new technologies are coming up. And based on that, will this business model be relevant 3 years from now? And scalability, of course, tech-enabled scalability. If there's scalability built into the business model as well as the technology, that's something I definitely look at. So these 3 things create the philosophy, which helps me kind of sift through, identify potential startups to invest in.
That's fantastic. Vikas, how about you?
So, so we basically, we are one of the early entrants to this AIF alternate funding in India in 2013 when, SEBI came with the rules in 2012. To give a little more background, we have 2 funds in India. Fund 1 is fully invested, and Fund 2 is nearly, investing is in the last leg, probably, I would say. So, we are reserving some capital, and on the investment philosophy side, I would say we try to find out the opportunities where, where the opportunities meet the needs, the greatest needs. And to say, innovation is a part of that. So when we invest, we look into, the vision of the entrepreneur and the top technology teams, basically, how the entrepreneur is blending technology and his vision. And basically, because seed funding is generally, the investment in entrepreneurs. And yeah, certainly, as Avelo said, like how the idea will be after, say, 3 or 5 years, where the business will go. Yeah.
Okay. So I think across whatever Vikas and Avelo you said, one of the key things we're looking for here is innovation. But let's hear it from Vatsal. Vatsal, can you tell us what's your investment philosophy as of today?
Sure. Thanks. So just to give more context around 100x VC, we're an early stage venture fund based out of India, focusing only on Indian startups. We invest the first check into these companies typically. And we invest through the iSafe note, which is the India Simple Agreement for Future Equity. It's a form of a convertible, except that it's not debt on your books. It's only convertible into equity, and it's much, much simpler with very few rights given to investors. So makes life much easier for entrepreneurs. So how we look at investments would be, we have while there's a lot of process there, we have 5 points that we keep in mind. One is a very, very large, growing and attractive market. Second is a team that has expertise in that market. Third is a business model which actually works and scales in that particular market. Fourth is some sort of unique IP or ability to create a moat which enables them to differentiate from competitors. And the 5th would be an internal conviction, our internal conviction as investors, that this can give us a 20x return, right? So those are some 5 points that we look at while taking calls on investments.
Wow, that's fantastic. So talking about investments, when I was first told that, 3 of us, the 4 of us will be in conversation, I thought to myself, such interesting journeys all of you have, right? And I'm sure it's very difficult to, put into one single capsule all the various experiences and learnings that all of you would have had. But if just for the benefit of everyone that's, watching us right now, if you had to pick just one or two of the most important investing lessons that you've learned from all the transactions and the businesses that you've witnessed, which one would that be? Which would be that most important investing lesson? Who wants to go first?
We'll go with Avelo.
So for me, the biggest lesson has been tech due diligence. So it has been a few times that I have personally made a mistake where the founders have said something about the tech, and after investment turns out that it's not what it was told to be. So now what I do is I have somebody who does a tech due diligence, looks through the analytics data, looks through the active users and whatnot, and really gives the real, so I can really tell if it is faked or is it real. And that way it's a more sound way of actually making the investment. So that's one thing I can suggest.
Great. Vikas, what about you?
What I've learned is, the seed investments, we are talking about seed investments, startup investments, they are binary in nature, 0 or 1. So where 1 becomes the hero. And, as I said earlier, like the right entrepreneur and technology. So any compromise on these two aspects while investing generally, takes the investment to 0. And to add on, another important lesson is the, protection of IP at the right time. So I have seen a few investments going to 0 just because the IPs were not protected at the right time. So yeah, that's what.
I think
When
that
you say IP, just a quick question I want to ask Vikas, is it like trademark or you mean like actually patent and things like that?
So patent and things like those.
Okay.
So like I've seen, one of the, so we had a investment where there's a very good, product. And it was a very, a different kind of methodology going into the production, but the IP was not protected. And, the contract manufacturers, they started manufacturing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, see, that's great. I think, Vatsal, even if you could tell us your most important investing lesson and probably give us, a quick example of how and when that lesson manifested in front of you.
No, for sure. So this lesson manifested, this is a anti-portfolio for me. This lesson manifested around 2018, early days of my early days in venture. The first deal that I saw pretty much, it's called Bharat Pay. They used to create Bharat QR codes for UPI for merchants to use to collect payments for any small shops and retailers, right? And they were looking for their very first check, and I thought, okay, let's look at this business. I looked at the numbers, seemed okay. Tech was not that good. I thought, wait, UPI, nobody uses it in Mumbai, man. That doesn't make any sense. So I talked to the founders a bit, and then I said, okay, this doesn't make sense to me. I'll pass on it. And then 2 years later, today, like a $300 million company or so, I think. It's been a big miss for me, right? They're probably going to be a unicorn, and I really missed out on that buzz. And my lesson has been twofold. One is, of course, if you think the founders can execute, which I did back then, but I just didn't think that the business had any merit to it. Then you should take a bet on it, because these founders out executed anybody and everybody else, and they've done fantastic work. And second would be, Mumbai is not representative of India as a market. India is very diverse as a market. Mumbai is different, Bangalore is different, Delhi is different, and Bharat is different, right? So just because I don't see people using UPI in Mumbai doesn't mean the rest of the country doesn't. You have to look at the base rates there, and the base rates said that UPI is here to stay. So I missed that one out.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. I'm sure there are many such more investing lessons that I'm hoping to bring out in one way or the other through this conversation. So, India has witnessed launch of what, more than 55,000 startups to date, when more than 3,200 startups raising $63 billion in funding in the last 5.5 years alone. While those numbers are actually very encouraging, the truth is there's still a lot of funding to be done. So I want to ask you a question now from the other perspective, which is, what is the main checklist which startups should consider even before approaching investors for funding?
When I get messages every single day, it's like without even saying any introduction about the startup. Sir, can you fund me? Can you give me 20 lakhs? Can you give me, it's like as if it's an ATM machine. So I think it's important to understand that when you buy a car, the car has gone through crash testing, only then you buy the car and you trust that it will not blow up on you and your family. So similarly, when you're building a startup, please understand that you have to first do some work on your end, put some skin in the game. It's not very hard to build a prototype, a proof of concept, get some users on board, and show some traction. If and you will realize that you're not ready yet. So build, test, learn, build, test, learn, build, test, learn till you get to a point where you feel this is scalable and repeatable. Then come to investors so you can actually negotiate. Otherwise, what happens? You come to an investor with a begging bowl and you're like, I have an idea. Will you please fund me? And investors like, no, thank you. Or maybe like, I'll take 80% of your company, right? And what happens? You become an employee in your own company, right? So the important part is you should be in a position to negotiate when you have built something. So investor needs an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur needs an investor. We have to understand this first. So investor needs to grow his money. Entrepreneur needs to grow his business, startup. So both have a need for each other. But if you're not there, you're just with the idea and just a lot of passion and PowerPoint, you think, you can woo the investor. That time is not anymore. 2015, 2016, that used to happen. But investors have grown up. And I think most people want to see traction. I mean, there's so many startups, as you rightly said, Zania. There's a lot of options. So I'd rather go where I can see a more dynamic team that has already built something where with if you can go from zero to revenue with X effort, with my help, you can go from that revenue to 10X or 20X, right? And that's what an investor is looking for, that what can you do with your own effort? And then that's the validation for me as an investor that with my help, you can do so much more. But if you say, hey, everything is on you and I will just do everything on your strength. And if I don't succeed, great, you lose all your money. And I get to say I got experience and a lot of learning. I think that's a little unfair. And I think that's where the misconceptions lie, where people think investors are ATM machines. That's not the case. So you should do your part and we come in and we both need each other to grow together, grow the business.
Okay, now I think you gave some incredible insights, and that's a pretty straightforward answer, I must say. But just to sort of ask you a technical question, Avelo, since you've done so many of these, and from experience, is there typically a certain X number of days, months, or years that you'd like to see a new idea go from test to learn?
It's not a function of time. It's a function of traction. So I have seen companies that have gone from 0 to 25,000 users in 30 days. I have seen companies for 3 years still in analysis paralysis mode, right? Doing market research and just researching and writing project reports and whatnot, right? So both are there. So it's not a function of time, it's a function of traction.
Well, that makes sense. Okay, Vatsal, do you want to go next and tell us what should be on the checklist of startups even before they approach investors?
Sure. I think maybe one thing I can add to Avelo's point is be sure that venture is the right way to raise capital for you, right? There are many ways you can raise capital. You can raise it from debt. You can bootstrap yourself just through revenue. You can, do a side hustle or services and invest that money into this business. There are many other opportunities as well. But idea is venture. You need to kind of read into what venture is and how venture economics work, and understand what investors actually look for in venture-backed companies to be able to say, okay, this venture is the right way to fund for me. Because once you're in the venture cycle, it becomes a vicious cycle where, because investors need a return, you're in the vicious cycle of kind of having to constantly keep raising funds and growing and growing. You're never allowed to say, okay, I'm done. I want to plateau now, and I'll just give a 10%, 15% return, right? That's not, investors are typically thinking in multiples, right? I want a 10x, I want 20x, I want a 50x. While of course that pressure is not something we can put on the entrepreneur, but that is kind of a responsibility that comes onto an entrepreneur when you're in venture, right? To keep raising, to keep increasing the value, to keep growing the company, and then give exit opportunities. That is one thing. And second is, every investor will have their thesis out on the internet, right? Whether it's on the LinkedIn, whether it's through their portcos, whether they have a website. So do a research on the thesis of that investor and then reach out to them. If you reach out to an impact investor saying, hey, I want to build a weapons company, then that's not obviously not a good fit, right? So knowing which investor to reach out to is very critical. And doing that homework gives the investor a sign that you're serious about your fundraising as well. So those are broadly 2 points I think I'd add.
Well, that's fantastic. Vikas, tell us, what do you think about it?
So I will try to build on what Avelo and Vatsal has said. So taking that the base, the skin in the game, and all that stuff is given. So to prepare, you should prepare before meeting or pitching to the investor. So the first is you should have the right mindset. So you have to wear a salesman hat instead of wearing a beggar hat. You have to edit yourself to intrigue the investor sufficiently so that they look into your business closely. So when you are meeting for the first time, you need to remember the goal of the first meeting is to take time for the second meeting. The investor should be ready to meet second time. So you have to try to explain the business and the how you are going to realize the potential, scalability, and all that stuff. And you have to keep it very precise. Like it shouldn't be more than a certain, say a time limit, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes, maybe, because after that investor will only hear blah, blah, blah. So they will lose the focus. And then second point is like, as Vatsal said, do your homework before reaching out to investors. Like your business specialize, every investor also specialize. And generally the entire information, most of the information is there on the websites of the investor. Like if you go to United's website, you will find out, questions what investor asks when you reach out to investors. And these are the questions generally which, we will ask when someone comes in. So you can actually prepare in advance. So I think that's what I would say.
Well, that's brilliant, actually. I mean, you literally took us into that room and gave us some very practical tips. Thanks, Vikas. Thank you very much. I wanted to understand from, all three of you, what is your outlook for the present startup ecosystem in India? Especially wanted to understand what is your take on, the vocal for local, the make in India trend that's going on currently.
So I can start first. So here, investors will differ, obviously, right? Because this is a relative question. So according to me, like what I feel is, the new decade should bring in, new capital and a fresh lease of life in the sector. Hopefully, it will come with sanity, which obviously, last couple of years, there was a slight pessimism and some filtering has happened. And it's good what has happened in the sense like you weed out the unwanted stuff, and this will keep on happening through the journey. With respect to the vocal for local, yeah, so that's I think that's the mantra, and that will be a very good initiative for the Indian startups. But along with that, government has to focus on they have to become very friendly to the businesses, especially these startups. So the ease of doing business, they have to work on, which I'm sure they are working on right now. So to give you, example like that tax harassments or things which happened some time back where, startups receive notices, okay, how to value a startup, even frankly, investors also struggle sometimes. So how can income tax department, value a startup and, levy tax on the premiums? So these kind of instances, they shouldn't happen. So that's what I would say.
Vatsal, you look like you have a lot going on in your mind right now. The moment I asked that question, tell us, what do you think?
No, nothing. I mean, I think Vikas was pretty spot on. We're bullish as well. I mean, we're betting on India, and I think there's a lot to come out of India that we've not yet seen. What's happening as a trend is, these last 10 years were like the baby years. Like the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem was just learning how to walk kind of thing, and now we're kind of ready to learn. We've got experienced entrepreneurs now, experienced investors who know how to weed out ideas, and entrepreneurs, and experienced entrepreneurs who know how to kind of mentor other entrepreneurs and to, build in a lean method in the, build, test, learn model that Avelo mentioned, right? So I think we're at that tipping point where this ecosystem is ready to kind of build more and more, and we're just ready to consume a lot more capital and grow. And I think the trend is going to be broadly, and I think this is something that reflects in how we choose our sectors, right? At 100x, where for class 2, we've focused a lot on SaaS, on deep tech, and on wellness and, mental health and health tech kind of thing, where maybe next 1.5 years on, consumer tech, anything around consumption and stuff may not be as big, given the situation of the economy, the freeze, etc. But broadly, I believe there'll be a lot of opportunity for SaaS companies, anybody selling to businesses, whether it's deep tech, which can help them reduce their costs, whether it's software, that can automate their work, whether you're selling in India or outside, anything of that sort will definitely have a big boost. And I think those businesses are going to definitely grow well. And anything in the health and wellness and tech space, which are key right today, which they've come to the forefront as being a core part of the human life, right? Where you need mental stability, you need good education. So anything solving for those is definitely also going to be there. So there's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs, and I'm really bullish that our founders who've learned how to build venture-backed industries and to scale them and grow them rapidly and make them profitable, I think they're going to do a really good job. So bullish on the next 10 years of India for sure.
Wow, that's fantastic. I think for your answer, Vatsal, you've also given some great insights to anyone in our audience right now who's thinking what to do next. So I hope they've taken all the clues and hints from what are those sectors that they should be looking at. Avelo, we're waiting to hear from you.
Sure. So it's a very active ecosystem, but it's also filled with a lot of entrepreneurs who feel, so it's what the movies tell you, right? You get a startup, you get very rich, you get the Ferrari and the girlfriend and all of that. So it's not, so that's one aspect of that. The other side is all these gurus and motivational speakers and so-called mentors who have never actually built a startup, but they talk a lot about building startups and whatnot. And so what it leads to is a lot of misconceptions about, it's very hard to build a startup. It takes a lot of effort to go from zero to revenue, right? And revenue to million and beyond that. So it's not for everyone. Let's first understand that. I think it's important to understand it's not for everyone, and we should really think through where one is going. Another thing is what is hot in the market. People go for like, okay, it's COVID, so health tech is huge and consumer and whatnot. Let's not go with what is hot, but let's go with what is your gift that you have, what you feel passionate about a certain market that you can empathize. So solve a problem. Don't build a business to get funding. Build a business to solve a problem. I think the misconception is, I just have to do something and somehow get the funding, and then life is good. Funding is the beginning. You have to actually return the money. It's about exit. Every investor is looking for an exit so that, you get, like Vatsal said, 20x return for their case. And everybody has that expectation. So entrepreneurs are not thinking in that direction that I grow the investors' money and get it back to them. Rather, it's like, I got the funding, your story covered me, all good. I am now an entrepreneur. That's the misconception. So what's happening is a lot of misconception is going around because, as it happens in any, even in the religious sphere, people, so many, Dariwala people have 1,000 crores net worth, talking about all kinds of things, nothing to do with reality. Not all of them, but most of them. So same thing with happening in the startup ecosystem as well, which is great. I mean, it's thriving. When I first came to India, I started, tried to do a TV show, and I went to multiple TV channels, and they said, look, in India, people watch cinema, politics, and cricket. You want to do startup TV show? Fine. You give us the money, we'll give you the time, but nothing is going to happen. And they were very true, but now it's different. Now Bollywood talks about startups, reality shows are there, all kinds of things, startup. So as a result, there's a lot of people who are not really serious about it, right? So the ecosystem is, it's huge. It's a lot of people shouting, but very few people. So money is available, investments are available. What is lacking is really awesome entrepreneurs who are serious, ethical, and are actually passionate about solving a problem rather than passionate about how to pitch and get that investment money in, right? So that's kind of like my honest opinion about where the ecosystem is right now.
I mean, I'm completely with you on this. I'm a huge Bollywood fan myself, watch movies in and out. And just, in fact, a few nights ago, I was wondering, how did Sunil Shetty go from a Tone Kolhapuri chappal to, a multi-million dollar millionaire? And I think that's probably where one of the things that we need to address. So maybe Avelo, Vikas and Vatsal, besides doing all the awesome things that you do, you should probably make like a nice, great movie on a startup. How about that? And just take care of all these misconceptions. But great. So, it's incredible the things that are, very subtly coming out of this conversation. And since we're on the topic of vocal for local and make in India, and Vikas, you spoke about, the kind of government support that startups would be expecting in India. I wanted to quickly ask, all of you, what are the policies that you think the government should come up with to help small businesses and startups to grow in not just competitive anymore, but especially post-COVID, a very dynamic environment?
Okay. You want me to go first, I guess?
Okay.
So first of all, I just want to applaud the government for doing a great job. Most people don't see it, but I have had multiple experiences. I was at Rashtrapati Bhavan. There were around 200 startups for tier 2, tier 3 cities, all scientists or agro-tech, all received, mudra loans up to 2 crores, who would have never been able to build their startup, have no access to investors, but they got government help. Recently, we were judging Startup India awards. And again, I saw people from the most remotest parts of India who have nothing, no exposure, no connections, but somehow or other they got help from the government, Atal incubation centers, Atal tinkering labs, all of these little things that are oasis that the government has created. It has really helped a lot of people. Having said that, like Vikas very rightly said, there was a lot of issues with taxes, and it's like you're an entrepreneur, that means you're a criminal. You're just going to cheat the government. I think that has evolved. Last March budget, a lot of the penalties were removed, a lot of things were eased out, yet a lot of that is, just talk, but implementation has to happen also, which has not 100% happened. In terms of, so a lot of things startups don't know. So I think the government has a lot of websites with a lot of information. But the unfortunate part is those websites are so dated and so ugly that anybody looking at it can fall asleep very easily, right? So if they just make it a little bit more lively, the information is there, but people don't have the patience to go through all of that, So making it more 21st century, I think we need more people like Vatsal. I love the 100x VC website, by the way. It's fantastic. And if something like, if the government can make this more attractive, I think more people will be, to make it dumb friendly. I think that it's a good start. Of course, policies and everything else, there's think tanks thinking about that. but at least the basic thing when a person interfaces with Stand Up India or a Startup India or Invest India, inspire them so they can see the website and be like, you know what, I know what to get where, and these are the resources. But what happens is you get depressed by saying, oh my God, so much work, so much paperwork, so much this. I'm not sure if I should go for this or should I just not just get a job, right? So that shouldn't be the case.
Well, I think that's a great point you brought out, Avelo, because even before we jump to what the policies are, I think from an educational point of view, of even just knowing what they are, we need to work on design. Vatsal, what do you think? What would you like to see change or evolve?
I think fantastic points from Avelo. Thank you again for the, by the way, compliment on 100xvc website. Kind of, I see Avelo's point there, where entrepreneurs are treated as, criminals first. के, अरे ये company चालू है, कुछ झोल करने का कोशिश कर रहा होगा, right? And that happens from an investor perspective as well. So, something we've done ourselves is try to bring the iSafe, which doesn't give investor as many rights. So it has to be a trust-based investment, right? Where investor puts in money only if they trust the entrepreneur, because I don't have any rights. From a policy perspective, I think the government's done a fantastic job until now. There's been great improvements for sure. I think maybe something I would love seeing is the speed of incorporation. If it could improve, that is very important, right? What happens is in the US, I mean, this incentivizes our companies to try to incorporate outside, right? When they want to sell elsewhere in the world, they want to gain payments and stuff, and it's like, oh, US may through Stripe, Atlas Labs, you can incorporate in 2 days or so, right? But in India, it takes 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and it sucks for India that so much of wealth that is being generated, so much of revenue is being siphoned to companies in the US, or which is the right decision for entrepreneurs right now as well, right? It's not that they're taking a wrong decision. It's just what's best for them. So if you can make those laws better, where company incorporation is easier, selling outside of India and getting revenue from outside of India into India is easier, then it could make a big difference to the ecosystem as a whole, right? Where we don't have to force our portcos to incorporate in Singapore or US. I mean, 100x doesn't, but investors do, because those countries are more stable. It's easier to gain payments and investments and exits. So it just makes more sense. So if you can enable as a government companies to incorporate more and more in India and the work outside of India only, then it works out very well.
Fantastic. Because is there anything you'd like to add to it?
Yeah. So certainly, I think the government has done a great job and is doing a great job. Actually, there are hundreds of schemes for startups. It's just that the information is not at one place. So that's the trouble. I don't know how many knows. Even there is a scheme where the government reimburses a part of airfares of the startups.
Wow.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So all those things are there, but the thing is, the implementation is a problem, and the information dissemination is a problem. And as everyone is saying, the mindset needs to be, is to be more positive. So I went back to my, college days, or when I was doing my CMSCs, when I was doing CA. So one of the lines which you used to read is, auditor is a watchdog, not a bloodhound. So it's like, have trust. And, I agree. There are some few black sheep some here and there, but then you can't paint everyone with the same brush. So that mindset needs to change. So that's all.
That's brilliant. So, I have so many questions and we're actually running close to the time. But I want to quickly check with all of you, where do you stand as far as this thought of mine is concerned? That do you see rather a need for more seed investors, angel investors, or VCs in India currently to help incubate startups?
I think so, actually, because what happened was in early, say, when this all of things are starting in India, say 2013, 14, 15, a lot of people actually came in. Though it was difficult, but we could manage to, warm up the investors, and they actually came in. And then many of them burned their fingers in 17, 18, 19. Because of that, there is a slight pushback, pullback from the investors. So we could see that when, we were raising the next fund. And that was one of the reasons where we decided, to move one notch above, where, moving from seed investor to a pre-series A investor, where, already some institutional investor has come in at the seed level. But I'm sure, with the industry maturing and now with people understanding, what is expected from them, entrepreneurs knowing, like as Avelo was saying, it's not about, you're building a business to get the money from the investor. It's about, solving some problem and doing the actual business. So things would change, and more investors should come in.
Vatsal, what are your thoughts on that?
No, for sure. I think it's very, very important that we get more and more angels and early stage investors into the ecosystem. We're trying our best to encourage the ecosystem in whatever sense. We try to provide curated deal flow to our network of angels. We have a lot of knowledge sessions for angels who are working with us. And this is like, hamara to portcos hai, so it's not like we're taking a fee or anything, right? We're just investing in them and enabling other people to invest with us into these companies, right? So definitely there's a need, and we're trying to work out. I mean, one of the biggest successes of the US ecosystem is having so many HNIs who believe in the startup ecosystem and who are ready to put in checks at an idea stage into these companies, right? So that, I mean, yes, to Avelo's point, entrepreneurs need to have more skin in the game and to be able to have that. But there are so many also underrepresented individuals, right, who do not have access. People from tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, tier 4 cities who do not have access to capital, who do not have access to networks like we do, but we can bring a ton of that to the table for them, right? So definitely we need more angels, and I think hopefully with a lot of efforts that everybody in the ecosystem is putting in, including the angel networks and us, and we'll get there for sure.
So, taking from what Vatsal just mentioned about the fact that a lot of us don't have that kind of access or education, Avelo, I'm very curious to ask you from their perspective, from the perspective of everyone watching us right now, what's the kind of additional support that a founder gets along with the investment?
It always depends on the investor, but generally, ideally speaking, the investor should understand the market and the industry where the founder lies, and that way they have friends and networks. So for example, one of the companies that we got a exit on. So what happened was, a common investor in the company was a friend of Vikas Sarda. So he was just having a conversation with Vikas Sarda. It's like, oh, here is a company. Would you like to look at it? At Vijay, it's like in literally a week, he closed a deal and bought the company. And it was a $20 million exit, called Night Stay. So fantastic. It's just those kind of networks. So an investor is not just a money guy, but a guy who comes in and opens doors for you that you yourself cannot open, right? Or brings in the strategy. If they have that insight into market, then they can bring in that strategy, the growth, even recruiting sometimes. So it's basically just like a partner who has more resources than you do, and who can bring you, because, if I have 20% of the company or 10% of the company, I want to grow that 10% to whatever, as much as I can. So I want to help you grow my 10% or 20%. So that's what an investor does, is far beyond just the money. It's a friend, it's a partner who's there to support you grow your equity in the company. But just to go back to the conversation about if you want more VCs or more investors, I'm from Calcutta, you guys are from Bangalore and Mumbai. So what has happened is, what I see, there is a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of investors. And there should be more. I'm not denying that. But geographical proximity is a very big issue in the decision-making process. So a Mumbai guy would want a startup to either move to Mumbai or be in Mumbai. So that way they feel comfortable that I can Of course, understandably so, that I can see how the startup is doing and what a Bangalore guy or a Gurgaon guy, that's what. Now it's in Calcutta that you have to move. So what we see in East India is a lot of brain drain. A lot of our guys have to leave our hometowns and go to these three places, or else you don't forget about funding. But what I am seeing, so in the last 3 months, there was around 11.5 crores funding that some of our startups got. And all of that was, they've never seen the venture capitalists or the investors in person. They've only seen them on Zoom, right? They met on Zoom, they pitched on Zoom, and they got funded thereafter. All the due diligence happened virtually, right? And that was fantastic. So I feel like that's a great step forward, where geographical proximity is being superseded by the digital connection, right? And if that happens, then what's the difference between a Mumbai guy or a guy from Chicago, right? So I think the investors are clumped up in 3 or 4 key areas, but there are startups with promising potential all over India. And if that gap of geographical proximity can be bridged, I think a lot of investors would be happy to have more prospects, and startups would be happy to have access to more resources, more financial resources.
Well, that's fantastic. I have literally a couple of minutes to go, and I think I don't know when's the next time that all three of us, all three of you will be together. So just while we're closing, I want to ask if each one of you could share very quickly your one go-to advice to give to small businesses or startups on how to thrive in 2020 and going forward. Vikas, why not begin with you?
So two things. One is please concentrate on your business and the positives, rather than concentrating on negatives and cribbing about the ecosystem and the environment. So that's more on the, if you ask me formally, or the informal thing is entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. So when things are like current, how things are, you are actually very lonely. You will call someone, and some people will not even pick up your call, thinking, "Arey, ye paisa maang lega yaar, iske business ke andar paisa chahiyega." So don't lose hope. Have persistence and be passionate about what you are doing. Things will turn up, and keep on doing.
Okay, so be persistent and passionate. Vatsal.
Hi. Sure. So I think only thing I would like to say is, be adamant on the goal and flexible on how you get there. You want to build a good business in, let's say, XYZ sector, then be adamant that this is the business I want to build, but be flexible on how you get there. You never know what the real world needs. So you have to be flexible on what you're building, but your goal can still be adamant. That's usually what I think is really helpful.
That's fantastic. Avelo, tell us.
So I started my entrepreneurship journey when it's the last recession, 2008, 2009, and I've survived through. So one mantra that I've kind of coined is think big, start small, grow slow, then grow fast. So think really big, sky's not the limit, but start with what is the low-hanging fruit, what you have access to. Start small, make your mistakes, don't repeat the mistakes, grow slow. You'll see that, a lot of things you don't know pop up. That's just natural. Things take longer than expected. So grow slow. Once you've found a repeatable, scalable model, then come to investors, take in all the funding you need and capture the market, because then the copycats come in. And that's where you grow really, really fast. So think big, start small, grow slow, then grow really fast.
Wow. I wish we had another hour. Actually, I have another hour, but you certainly don't. But, if I have to just sort of summarize all of this, I think the one thing that I understand is the funding winter did come in early. There is still a big focus on sustainabilities of, startups and new businesses, which I think is going to play a major role in the number of funding deals that will be closed. And even though this has been a sideways year for the entire world, I think there are still, like Vikas rightly pointed out, there are several positives still in the Indian market to give us hope about the future of startups. And growing from a nascent stage to what today is a very flourishing ecosystem to the current stage of maturity and stability, I think Indian startups have still some of the best market conditions that one can take advantage of, especially with technology and digital products, and adopting those kind of services is at an all-time high, and that's really what we need to ride on. And I think once the medium, the long-term pandemic subsides, the last 4 words that I'd want to say is there's no stopping Indian startups. Yeah, you want to give me a thumbs up on that? Fantastic. Avelo, Vikas, Vatsal, thank you so much. I think you're all very, very accessible across your digital and social media platforms. So even though we can't do a live chat right now with the audiences, I'm pretty sure you're there. But through these last 35 minutes, thank you for the incredible guidance that you've given all of us. And have a great rest of the 2020 and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Zenia. You've been amazing.
Thanks, Zenia. Thanks, Vikas. Thanks, Avelo.
Thanks, Vikas. Thanks, Vatsal. Nice meeting you as well.
Yep, same here. Thanks a lot.